Two homeless 11-year-old twins found a wallet stuffed with thousands of dollars. They were starving, they had nothing. But what they did next would reunite them with family they never knew existed. Jerome and Javier Davis stood in pouring rain, staring at more money than they'd seen in their entire lives. The expensive leather wallet belonged to someone named Raymond Whitmore, a name that meant nothing to two kids living in a group home. "We could eat for months," Javier whispered, his empty stomach twisting with hunger. Jerome's hands trembled holding the wallet. $3,000 in cash, enough to change everything, enough to escape their life of hand-me-down clothes and shared meals. But instead of keeping it, Jerome made a choice that seemed crazy. "We have to find him. He's probably scared." 20 blocks away through the storm, no bus money, no phone, just two kids determined to do the right thing, even when the right thing hurts. They had no idea the man they were about to meet was searching for them, too. He just didn't know it yet. But to understand why this moment would matter so much, you need to know what Jerome and Javier's life was really like. 4:30 in the morning. Angel's group home was already stirring as 23 children began another day of survival. Jerome and Javier shared the bottom bunk of a triple-stacked bed, their bodies pressed together for warmth in the drafty room. The twins had learned to wake before the alarm. It gave them precious minutes to help the younger kids, tying shoes, finding lost socks, wiping away tears from children who still cried for mothers who weren't coming back. "Jerome, I can't find my other shoe," whispered 6-year-old Maria, her voice thick with sleep. "Check under Tommy's bed," Jerome replied softly, already pulling on his own worn sneakers. "He kicks things under there when he has nightmares." This was their world, had been since they were babies. Miss Carter, the head caretaker, moved through the chaos with practiced efficiency. She was kind but exhausted. 23 kids, 3 adults, and a budget that never stretched far enough. "Morning, angels," she said to the twins, using her pet name for them. "Can you help with breakfast again?" They always did. Jerome distributed the single piece of toast each child received. Javier made sure the younger ones got the bigger portions. When Maria started crying because her toast was too small, Jerome quietly broke his in half. "But you didn't eat yesterday either," Javier protested quietly. "I'm not that hungry," Jerome lied, his stomach cramping from emptiness. The walk to school was 2 miles each way. They could take the bus, but that cost money the group home didn't have. So they walked, rain or shine, sharing stories to distract from their worn-out shoes and growling stomachs. "When we grow up," Jerome said, stepping carefully around a puddle, "we'll have a house where every kid has their own bed. And a kitchen where no one ever goes hungry," Javier added, their daily ritual of hope. Promise? Promise. At Lincoln Elementary, they were known as the Group Home Twins. Some kids were cruel about it. Others just ignored them entirely. But Jerome and Javier had each other, and that made them rich in the only way that mattered. Their teacher, Miss Williams, saw something special in them. She bought extra pencils with her own money, pretending she'd found them in the supply closet. She saved half her lunch to share, claiming she wasn't hungry. "You boys have something rare," she told them one afternoon. "You have each other, and you have hearts that refuse to break." The twins didn't understand what she meant then. They just knew they had to take care of each other, the way no one had ever taken care of them. Their afternoon routine never changed. Homework at the public library because it was quiet and warm. Mrs. Rodriguez, the librarian, pretended not to notice they were homeless. She'd slip them granola bars and let them stay until closing. "Your parents raised you well," she said once, not knowing the pain those words caused. "Yes, ma'am," Jerome replied, because it was easier than explaining they'd never known their parents. Back at the group home, dinner was a communal affair. Thin soup, day-old bread from the bakery downtown, and if they were lucky, some donated fruit that was almost too ripe to eat. Jerome and Javier had learned to eat slowly to make their small portions last. They'd learned to smile when their stomachs ached. They'd learned that complaining didn't fill empty bellies or mend broken shoes. But they'd also learned something else, something that set them apart from other kids who'd been hurt by life. They'd learned that kindness didn't cost anything. When old Mr. Peterson dropped his groceries outside the group home, the twins spent an hour helping him pick up scattered cans. When their classmate Sarah forgot her lunch money, Jerome gave her his bus fare and walked home in the rain. "Why do you do that?" Javier asked after Jerome had given their last dollar to help buy medicine for another group home kid. "Because maybe someone will help us someday," Jerome replied. "And if they don't, at least we helped someone." Their only treasure was a faded photograph they kept hidden under their mattress. It showed a young black woman holding twin babies, her smile radiant despite the hospital gown. On the back, in faded ink, "Jerome and Javier, Mommy loves you forever, Sarah." They didn't know their father's name. The social services files just said unknown. But they had this picture, this proof that someone had loved them once. Every night before sleep, they'd look at the photo with a flashlight. "Do you think she would be proud of us?" Javier would ask. "I think she's watching," Jerome would answer, "making sure we take care of each other." The group home was scheduled for closure next year. Budget cuts. The older kids would be transferred to facilities across the state. Jerome and Javier might be separated for the first time in their lives. They didn't talk about it, couldn't bear to. Instead, they held each other a little tighter and promised that no matter what happened, they'd find their way back to each other. They had no idea that their biggest test and their greatest miracle was just hours away. Then came the day that would test everything they believed about doing the right thing. October weather in the city was unpredictable, but this storm caught everyone off guard. What started as light drizzle during lunch had turned into a torrential downpour by dismissal time. Jerome and Javier stood under the school's narrow overhang, watching other kids get picked up by parents in warm cars. Their shared umbrella, a gift from Miss Carter last Christmas, had 2 broken spokes and more holes than fabric. "Ready?" Jerome asked, knowing they had no choice. They stepped into the storm. The first 10 blocks weren't too bad. They'd learned to navigate puddles, to duck under store awnings when the rain got too heavy. But as they moved through the business district, the wind picked up, turning their umbrella inside out. "Just leave it," Javier said as Jerome struggled to fix the bent metal. "Miss Carter saved up for this," Jerome replied stubbornly. "We're not throwing it away." That's when they saw him. An elderly man in an expensive coat was rushing down the sidewalk, talking urgently into his phone. Even through the rain, they could tell his clothes cost more than the group home spent on food in a month. "The Shanghai contracts can't wait," he was saying, his voice tight with stress. "I need those documents tonight, or we will lose everything." The man stumbled slightly, catching himself against a lamppost. He looked pale, breathing hard from the exertion of fighting the storm. Then it happened. His phone slipped from his wet hand, shattering against the concrete. At the same moment, something dark fell from his coat pocket, sliding across the slick pavement toward a storm drain. The man didn't notice. He was bent over his broken phone, cursing under his breath. Jerome saw it first, a thick leather wallet, rich brown and obviously expensive, moving toward the rushing water at the curb. Without thinking, he lunged forward. His knees hit the wet concrete hard as he grabbed the wallet just inches from the storm drain. The leather was soaked but intact. Jerome's hands shook as he felt the weight of it. "Jerome," Javier whispered, kneeling beside his brother. "Look." Jerome opened the wallet carefully. His breath caught. Stacks of $100 bills, more money than they'd ever seen in one place. Credit cards that looked like they were made of platinum. And business cards. Raymond Whitmore, CEO, Whitmore Industries. The name sent a strange shiver through Jerome. Familiar somehow, like a song he'd heard in a dream. "How much is that?" Javier asked, his voice barely audible over the rain. Jerome counted quickly. "At least $3,000. They stared at each other. $3,000 would change everything. Food for months, new clothes, maybe even a small apartment when they aged out of the system. Around them, the storm intensified. Other pedestrians hurried past, heads down, focused only on getting out of the rain. No one paid attention to 2 wet kids crouched on the sidewalk. "We could take just a little," Javier said quietly. "Like $20. He'd never miss it." Jerome's stomach was cramped with hunger. They hadn't eaten since breakfast. 1 piece of toast shared with Maria. His shoes had holes that let in water with every step. His jacket was so thin he could feel the cold rain soaking through to his skin. The man was still 20 feet away, struggling with his broken phone. He hadn't noticed the wallet was missing. Might not notice for hours. Think about Maria, Javier continued, his voice getting stronger. And Tommy, and all the little kids back home. This money could help everyone. Jerome looked at the bills again. So much money. More than they'd ever dreamed of having. But then he remembered something Miss Carter had told them once. Your character isn't what you do when people are watching. It's what you do when no one would ever know. He closed the wallet firmly. It's not ours, he said simply. But Jerome, it's not ours, Jerome repeated, standing up despite his soaked clothes and shivering body. Someone's probably really scared right now. He looked at the business card again. Raymond Whitmore. The address was in the fancy part of downtown, at least 20 blocks away. But something in Jerome's chest told him this was important. More important than being warm. More important than being hungry. We have to return it, he said. In person. Javier stared at his brother. That's so far, and we're already soaked. Then we'll get wetter. The man with the broken phone was walking away now, still unaware of his loss. Jerome and Javier could have let him disappear into the storm, could have kept the wallet and told themselves they were just lucky. Instead, Jerome called out, "Excuse me, sir, did you drop something?" The man turned, confusion clear on his face. When he saw the wallet in Jerome's hands, his expression shifted to pure shock. Not because they'd found it, but because they were giving it back. What happened next would prove that sometimes the smallest people have the biggest hearts. The man stared at Jerome and Javier as if they were speaking a foreign language. Rain streamed down his face, but he didn't seem to notice. His eyes were fixed on the wallet in Jerome's outstretched hands. That's mine, he said slowly, disbelief evident in his voice. Yes, sir, Jerome replied politely. You dropped it when your phone fell. We saw it sliding toward the drain. Raymond Whitmore, though the twins didn't know his name yet, took the wallet with trembling fingers. He opened it quickly, his eyes widening as he saw everything intact. Every bill, every card, every important document. You didn't take anything? He asked, his voice barely audible over the rain. No, sir, Javier said, as if the question confused him. It's not ours. Whitmore stared at them. Two children, maybe 11 years old, soaked to the bone in clothes that had seen better days. Their shared umbrella was broken, their shoes were worn through, and they were both shivering from the cold. But they'd chased down his wallet in a storm and returned every penny. Where did you find this exactly? He asked, still processing what had happened. Right there. Jerome pointed to where the storm drain gurgled with rushing water. It was about to go down the drain. We thought you'd be worried. Worried, Whitmore repeated. Yes, I would have been devastated. This has everything. My identification, my credit cards, cash for... He trailed off, realizing how much money these children had just handed back to him. The rain was getting heavier. Other pedestrians hurried past, some glancing curiously at the odd scene, a well-dressed older man standing in the storm talking to two wet children. You boys need to get out of this weather, Whitmore said, noticing how they huddled together for warmth. Where do you live? Angel's Group Home, Jerome answered honestly. It's about 15 blocks from here. Group Home, Whitmore repeated, something shifting in his expression. And you walked all this way in the storm? We always walk, Javier explained. The bus costs money. Whitmore felt something crack inside his chest. These children had nothing, and they'd just returned a fortune to him without hesitation. Listen, he said urgently. There's a diner just around the corner. Let me buy you both some hot food, at least. You must be freezing. The twins exchanged a look, that wordless communication they'd perfected over 11 years of having only each other. That's very kind, sir, Jerome said carefully. But we should get home. Miss Carter worries when we're late. Please, Whitmore insisted. Just until the storm passes. I can't let you walk 15 blocks in this weather after what you've done for me. Something in his voice, a genuine concern they rarely heard from adults, made them reconsider. Okay, Javier said quietly. Just until the rain stops. The Broadway diner was warm and bright, a refuge from the storm outside. Steam rose from their wet clothes as they slid into a corner booth. Whitmore ordered them hot chocolate and soup, watching as they warmed their hands around the mugs. What are your names? He asked gently. Jerome and Javier Davis, they answered in unison, another group home habit. Davis, Whitmore repeated, and something flickered in his eyes. And you said you live at Angel's group home? Yes, sir, since we were babies, Jerome explained. We don't remember our parents. Well, we remember our mama a little, Javier corrected, pulling out their treasured photograph. This is all we have of her. Whitmore took the photo carefully. A young black woman in a hospital gown holding twin babies, her smile radiant despite obvious exhaustion. On the back, Jerome and Javier, Mommy loves you forever, Sarah. Sarah, Whitmore whispered, his face going pale. Did you know her? Jerome asked hopefully. No, Whitmore cleared his throat. She looks like she is very young. 19, Javier said. That's all we know. She died when we were born, and our daddy, nobody knows who he was. Whitmore stared at the photo longer than necessary, his hands shaking slightly. When he handed it back, his voice was thick. She looks like she loves you very much. We think so too, Jerome said, carefully tucking the photo away. Their soup arrived, and Whitmore watched as they ate slowly, savoring every spoonful. These weren't children who took food for granted. They were children who knew hunger intimately. Tell me about yourselves, he said. What do you like to do? We help take care of the little kids at the home, Javier said between spoonfuls. And we want to go to college someday. College? Whitmore smiled. What do you want to study? I want to help kids like us, Jerome said earnestly. Kids who don't have families. Maybe be a social worker. And I want to build places where kids can be safe and happy, Javier added. Like a community center, but better. Whitmore felt his throat tighten. Those are wonderful dreams. Miss Carter says if we work hard and stay good, maybe we can make them happen, Jerome said. Stay good, Whitmore repeated. What does that mean to you? The twins looked at each other again. It means helping people even when it's hard, Javier explained. And doing the right thing even when nobody's watching, Jerome added. Like returning wallets in rainstorms, Whitmore said softly. That wasn't hard, Jerome said, confused. That was just normal. As they talked, Whitmore found himself studying their faces. Something about Jerome's smile when he laughed, something about the way Javier tilted his head when he was thinking. Familiar gestures that tugged at memories he'd tried to bury. When they finished eating, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. We should go now, Jerome said. Thank you for the food, sir. Please, Whitmore said, reaching for his wallet. Let me give you something, a reward for your honesty. Both boys stepped back immediately. No, thank you, Javier said firmly. We didn't help you for money, Jerome added. But surely you could use... Doing the right thing isn't supposed to get you paid, Jerome interrupted politely but firmly. Whitmore stared at them in amazement. In his world, everyone had a price. Everyone wanted something. But these children just wanted to get home safely. At least let me call you a cab, he offered. We like walking, Javier said. It gives us time to talk. As they prepared to leave, Whitmore felt desperate to maintain some connection to these extraordinary children. Boys, he called as they reached the door. My name is Raymond Whitmore. If you ever need anything at all, you can find me at Whitmore Industries downtown. Thank you, Mr. Whitmore, they said together. Will you be okay? Getting home in this weather? Jerome smiled, the same smile that had been haunting Whitmore's memory. We'll be okay. We always take care of each other. And then they were gone, disappearing into the drizzle, leaving Raymond Whitmore alone with a wallet full of money and a heart full of questions he was afraid to answer. But what Raymond offered next would reveal just how different these children were from anyone he'd ever met. The diner felt strangely empty after the twins left. Raymond Whitmore sat alone in the booth, turning their story over in his mind. In 40 years of business, he'd met presidents, celebrities, billionaires, but he'd never encountered anything like the simple honesty of those two boys. He pulled out his phone to call his driver, then stopped. Something nagged at him. The way Jerome had smiled, the protective way Javier had put his arm around his brother, and that name, Sarah Davis. Sarah. A memory stirred, uncomfortable and unwelcome. But before he could examine it too closely, his phone buzzed with urgent messages from his assistant. The Shanghai deal, the missing contracts. His real world intrudes on this strange, emotional moment. But as he tried to focus on business, all he could think about were two children walking 15 blocks in the rain after returning a fortune they desperately needed. Meanwhile, Jerome and Javier made their way home through the quiet streets. The storm had washed the air clean, and despite their wet clothes, they felt lighter somehow. "That was nice of him to buy us food," Javier said, stepping carefully around puddles. "Yeah, most adults don't really see us," Jerome replied. "But he was different." "Did you notice how he looked at Mama's picture?" Jerome nodded, like he was sad about something. They walked in comfortable silence for a few blocks, their shared umbrella finally cooperating now that the wind had died down. "Jerome," Javier said quietly, "do you ever wonder what would happen if we kept something like that wallet?" "All the time," Jerome admitted. "But then I'd think about Mama Sarah. What would she want us to do?" "She'd want us to be good," Javier said with certainty. "Even when being good is hard. Especially then." Back at Angel's group home, Miss Carter was waiting with towels and worried questions. She'd been pacing for an hour watching the storm and wondering where her boys were. "There you are!" she exclaimed, wrapping them in warm towels. "I was so worried. You're soaked through." "We're okay, Miss Carter," Jerome assured her. "We just had to help someone." "Help someone? In this storm?" The twins told her about the wallet, about the long walk to return it, about the kind man who bought them dinner. Miss Carter listened with growing amazement. "You returned all that money?" she asked. "Without taking anything?" "It wasn't ours," Javier said simply. Miss Carter pulled them both into a hug. "Your parents would be so proud," she whispered, not seeing the brief shadow that crossed their faces. Later that night, as the group home settled into its usual chaos of bedtime routines, Jerome and Javier lay in their shared bunk, whispering in the darkness. "Do you think we'll ever see him again?" Javier asked. "Probably not," Jerome replied. "Rich people live in different worlds. He seemed lonely, though. Yeah, like he needed friends. Maybe that's why we found his wallet. Maybe we were supposed to help him feel less alone." Jerome considered this. Maybe. Or maybe it was just a test. A test. To see if we'd do the right thing when nobody was making us. "Did we pass?" Jerome smiled in the darkness. "I think so." What they didn't know was that 20 blocks away in a penthouse office overlooking the city, Raymond Whitmore was staring at security footage on his computer screen. Footage from the diner's parking lot camera, showing two small figures walking away into the rain. He'd pulled up the video because something about those boys wouldn't leave his mind. Something about their faces, their gestures, their unconscious mannerisms. And the more he studied the footage, the more convinced he became that this encounter was more than coincidence. Sarah Davis. The name echoed in his memory like a ghost from his past. With trembling fingers, he reached for his phone and dialed his assistant. "Jennifer, I need you to pull some files for me. Old files, from about 12 years ago." "Sir, it's nearly midnight. This can't wait. I need everything we have on anyone named Sarah Davis. Birth records, marriage certificates, death certificates, everything." "May I ask what this is about?" Whitmore looked at the frozen image on his screen. Two boys walking into the rain, supporting each other the way brothers do. "I think I just met my grandsons." What Raymond did next would set in motion events that would change everything. But first, he needed to learn the truth about those twins that would shake him to his core. Whitmore Industries, 45th floor, 11:47 p.m. Jennifer Hayes had worked late before, but never like this. Her boss sounded different on the phone, urgent, almost desperate. "Sir, I found what you requested," she said, placing a thin folder on his desk. "There's only one Sarah Davis that matches your timeline." Whitmore opened the file with trembling hands. Death certificate, October 15th, 2012, Sarah Marie Davis, age 19. Cause, complications from childbirth. "The children?" he asked quietly. "Twin boys, born the same day. Jerome and Javier Davis, father listed as unknown. The same names, the same faces that had been haunting him since dinner." "Sir, there's something else." Jennifer's voice was careful. "I found a marriage certificate. Sarah Davis married someone named Michael James in June 2012. She slid the document across his desk. Whitmore read the groom's full name and felt the world tilt. Michael James Whitmore, his son, his disowned son who'd used his middle name instead of his last. "Oh, God," Whitmore whispered. The timeline crashed together in his mind. Michael's secret marriage, Sarah's pregnancy, the car accident on October 10th, Michael rushing through a storm to get Sarah to the hospital, dying 5 days before his sons were born. While Whitmore nursed his pride and prejudice, his grandsons grew up as orphans 20 blocks away. "Sir, what does this mean?" Whitmore stared at the marriage certificate, his son's signature hopeful despite everything, Sarah's careful handwriting, two young people in love while he'd been too bigoted to accept their happiness. "It means," he said slowly, "that 2 children returned my wallet tonight and they have no idea I'm their grandfather." "Your grandsons?" "My grandsons." The word felt foreign, wonderful, and heartbreaking all at once. He thought about Jerome's protective arm around Javier, the way they shared food without thinking, their absolute refusal to take money they desperately needed. "They have nothing, Jennifer. They've been living in group homes their entire lives while He gestured around his luxury office. "While I had everything and nobody to share it with. What do you want to do?" Whitmore looked out the window toward the part of town where Angel's group home sat in darkness, where his grandsons were probably asleep in a shared bed, dreaming simple dreams of having enough to eat. "Clear my schedule tomorrow," he said. "All of it. The Shanghai meeting. Cancel everything. I'm going to meet my grandsons properly." He picked up the photo of Sarah holding twin babies. Tomorrow he would tell them who they really were, and pray they could forgive him for taking 11 years to find them. The conversation that happened the next morning would reveal a family secret that had been hidden for 11 years. 7 a.m. sharp. Raymond Whitmore sat in his modest sedan outside Angel's group home, wearing jeans and a simple sweater instead of his usual $1,000 suits. His hands gripped the steering wheel as he stared at the weathered building where his grandsons had spent their entire lives. He'd barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Jerome's face, so much like Michael at that age. Javier's protective gesture with his brother, the same way Michael had protected his little sister decades ago. Miss Carter answered the door with obvious surprise. "Mr. Whitmore, is everything all right?" "I need to speak with Jerome and Javier," he said. It's about their family." Her expression shifted from confusion to concern. "Their family? But they don't have—" "They do," Whitmore interrupted gently. "They have me." 20 minutes later, Jerome and Javier sat across from him in the group home's small visiting room. They looked smaller in daylight, younger. Their clothes were clean but worn, carefully mended by Miss Carter's loving hands. "Hi, Mr. Whitmore," they said together, that unconscious synchronization that reminded him so much of Michael and his sister. "Boys, I asked to see you because I learned something last night, something important about your family." Jerome leaned forward. "Our family? First, can you show me that picture again? The one of your mother?" Javier pulled out their treasured photograph. Sarah holding twin babies, her smile radiant despite her youth and obvious exhaustion. Whitmore studied it carefully, though he'd memorized every detail from Jennifer's file. "Tell me what you know about your father." "Nothing," Jerome said sadly. "The papers just say unknown. We used to make up stories about him when we were little." "What kind of stories?" "That he was a good man who would have loved us," Javier said quietly. "Maybe he didn't know about us, or he would have come." Whitmore's throat tightened. "What if I told you that your father did know about you, and that he loved you very much?" The twins exchanged one of their wordless looks. "How could you know that?" Jerome asked. Whitmore reached into his jacket and pulled out a photograph, an old family picture, himself with a young man who looked remarkably like the twins. "This is my son, Michael," he said carefully. "He died 11 years ago in a car accident." "We're sorry," both boys said immediately, their empathy automatic and pure. "There's more." Whitmore's voice shook. "Michael was married when he died to a young woman named Sarah Davis." He watched understanding dawn slowly in their faces. "Sarah Davis?" Javier whispered. Whitmore pulled out the marriage certificate Jennifer had found. "Your mother and my son were husband and wife. Jerome, Javier, I'm your grandfather." Silence filled the small room. Jerome started crying. Not sad tears, but overwhelmed ones. Javier just stared, unable to process the magnitude of what he'd just learned. "Do we have a family?" Jerome managed through his tears. "You've always had family, I didn't know you existed until last night." "But why?" Javier asked, confusion clear in his voice. "Why didn't you know about us?" This was the part Whitmore had dreaded, the part that revealed his deepest shame. "Because when your father told me he was going to marry your mother, I said terrible things. I told him he wasn't my son anymore." "Why would you say that?" Jerome asked, genuinely puzzled. Whitmore took a shaky breath. "Because your mother was black and I was a foolish, prejudiced old man who thought skin color mattered more than love." Instead of anger, Jerome asked the question that broke Whitmore's heart. "Were you sad when you said those things?" "I was the saddest I'd ever been in my life, but I was too proud and too stubborn to admit I was wrong." "Daddy Michael must have been sad too," Javier observed with the simple wisdom of childhood. "He was, and I think that sadness might have contributed to his accident. He was rushing to get your mother to the hospital when the storm hit. He was trying to save his family while Whitmore's voice broke. "While I was too proud to be part of it." The twins processed this in their methodical way, looking at each other with that twin telepathy Whitmore was beginning to recognize. "So Mama Sarah wasn't alone," Jerome said finally. "She had someone who loved her." "And Daddy Michael wanted us," Javier added. "He just couldn't take care of us because he died. They both wanted you desperately. Your father was even writing me a letter trying to reconcile so I could meet you when you were born." Whitmore showed them the water-damaged fragments Jennifer had found. The twins read their father's words carefully, tracing the faded ink with their fingers. "He wanted you to know us," Jerome said wonderingly, "more than anything. And your mother, from what I've learned, she was exactly like both of you. Someone who put others first, who saw good in everyone." The next question came from Javier, asked with the devastating honesty of childhood. "Does this mean we're not alone anymore?" "You're not alone. You never were alone. You had each other, and now you have me." Whitmore's voice cracked. "If you'll have me." Jerome looked at his brother, then back at Whitmore. "Mr. Whitmore, Grandpa, we forgive you." "For what?" "For not knowing that love is more important than what people look like." The simple, immediate forgiveness from children whose lives had been shaped by his prejudice overwhelmed Whitmore completely. He wept then, 11 years of regret and loss pouring out in front of these extraordinary boys who had somehow grown up to embody everything good about the son he'd lost. "Do you understand what this means?" he asked when he could speak again. "You returned my wallet to me yesterday, but you also returned it to my family." "And you returned our family to us," Javier said with wonder. Jerome smiled, Michael's exact smile. "So we're all found now." "Yes," Whitmore whispered. "We're all found." What Raymond offered next would give the twins everything they'd ever dreamed of, and so much more. That afternoon, Whitmore's penthouse felt different, warmer somehow, despite its marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows. Jerome and Javier sat on the massive leather couch, still processing the morning's revelations. Their grandfather, the word still felt magical, had insisted they come see their new home. "Boys," Whitmore began gently, "we need to talk about your future." "Are we really going to live here?" Javier asked, his voice small in the vast space. "If you want to. But first, I want to know about your dreams. What do you want to be when you grow up?" Jerome and Javier exchanged one of their looks. "I want to help kids like us," Jerome said earnestly. "Kids who don't have families or who get bounced around like we did. And I want to build a place where kids never have to be hungry or scared," Javier added. "Like a really good group home, but better." Whitmore smiled. "What if I told you that you could start doing both of those things right now?" The twins looked confused. "Here's what I'm thinking," Whitmore continued. "First, this is your home now. Your room, your space, your family, forever. No more group homes, no more uncertainty about where you'll sleep tomorrow night." "Really?" Jerome whispered. "Really. Second, the best schools in the city. Not because there's anything wrong with you, but because brilliant, caring boys like you deserve every opportunity to learn and grow." "We're not very smart," Javier said quietly. "You're the smartest people I've ever met. You have something schools can't teach, wisdom, and kindness. Whitmore pulled out a folder filled with documents he'd prepared. Third, when you're ready, maybe when you're in high school, I want you to help me start something called the Michael and Sarah Foundation. What's that? Jerome asked. A foundation to help kids in foster care, group homes, and homeless families. You'd help design the programs because you know what kids actually need. When you're adults, you'll run it. The twins stared at him in amazement. Fourth, Whitmore continued. Starting this weekend, we're going back to Angel's group home. Not to move you out, you're already out, but to help. New beds, better food, more staff, educational programs. For Maria and Tommy and everyone? Jerome's eyes lit up. For everyone, and then we'll visit other group homes. You'll teach me what kids really need versus what adults think they need. Javier started crying. You'd really do all that? We'd do it together, but there's more. Whitmore opened another folder. Fifth, we're going to build something special. A community campus where kids waiting for families can actually be kids. Gardens, libraries, art studios, safe places to play. You two will design it. Design it? Who better to design a place for kids than kids who know what it's like to need a safe place? The twins were overwhelmed, but Whitmore wasn't finished. Sixth, college. Any college you want for anything you want to study, and after college, graduate school if you choose. Money will never be an obstacle to your dreams again. Jerome raised his hand tentatively. Grandpa, what if people think we only got these things because we're your grandsons? Then they'll be wrong. You're getting these things because you're extraordinary human beings who happen to be my grandsons. What if we're not good at business stuff? Javier worried. You're already better at the most important business skill, caring about people. Everything else can be learned. Whitmore's voice grew softer. But most importantly, you'll learn about your parents. I have photos, videos, and stories. Your father was exactly like both of you. Kind, protective, funny. He would have been so proud. And Mama Sarah? From everything I've learned, she was just like you, someone who put others first, who saw the good in everyone. The twins sat quietly for a long moment, absorbing everything. Grandpa, Jerome said finally, can we ask for one more thing? Anything. Can we make sure everyone who helped us gets something too? Whitmore's heart swelled. Even in their overwhelming joy, they were thinking of others. Like who? Miss Carter works so hard for almost no money. And Maria, the cleaning lady who helped us get to your office. And Miss Williams, our teacher, she buys school supplies with her own money. Done, Whitmore said immediately. Miss Carter gets a full scholarship to become a professional social worker if she wants. Maria gets college funding for her daughter. Miss Williams gets grants for her classroom. Anyone who helps you gets helped. What about kids who were mean to us? Javier asked. What do you think we should do? Help them too. Mean kids are usually just hurt kids. Whitmore stared at his grandsons in wonder. They weren't just good children, they were natural leaders with hearts that could change the world. There's one last thing, he said seriously. They waited. You never have to call me Grandpa if it feels strange. You can call me Raymond or Mr. Whitmore or anything that feels right to you. Jerome and Javier looked at each other, then back at him. We'd like to call you Grandpa, Jerome said softly. If that's okay, Javier added. That's more than okay. That's perfect. Whitmore leaned forward. Boys, I want you to understand something. This isn't charity. This isn't me being nice to poor kids. This is a grandfather making up for 11 years of lost time with his grandsons. We understand, Grandpa. And if this ever becomes too much, if you miss your old life, we won't, they said together. How do you know? Because this feels like coming home, Jerome explained. Like the empty space in our hearts got filled up, Javier added. Whitmore felt tears on his cheeks. Your parents would be so proud of who you've become. Are you proud of us too? Jerome asked. I'm prouder of you than I've ever been of anything in my entire life. The twins smiled. Michael's smile, Sarah's kindness, their own unique light. So, Whitmore said, ready to change the world together? Yes, Grandpa, together. What happened over the next year proved that when pure hearts meet unlimited resources, miracles become reality. 6 months later. Personal transformation. The penthouse had changed. Where once expensive art hung in sterile perfection, Now finger paintings from Angel's group home covered the refrigerator. The formal dining room had become a homework station where Jerome tutored struggling classmates every Tuesday. Javier's bedroom walls were covered with architectural sketches, his designs for the community campus they were building. Jerome's room looked like a social worker's office, filled with books about child psychology and foster care reform. Every morning at breakfast, the three of them planned their foundation work between bites of pancakes that Jerome insisted on making himself. "Cooking is love," he'd say, echoing something Miss Carter used to tell them. Educational journey. At their new private school, the twins became quiet leaders. They started a Big Brother, Big Sister program for lonely kids. Jerome organized food drives for homeless shelters. Javier created an after-school tutoring program where older kids helped younger ones. Their teachers were amazed. "Most wealthy kids feel entitled," Miss Peterson told Whitmore during a parent conference. "Your grandsons feel responsible." Angel's Group. Home transformation. The old building was gone, replaced by a bright, modern facility that looked more like a community center than an institution. Each child now had their own bed, their own storage space, their own sense of dignity. Miss Carter, now the director with a proper salary and full staff, gave tours to social workers from across the country. "This is what's possible," she'd say, "when someone asks kids what they actually need." Local news coverage showed the before and after. Cramped rooms versus spacious dormitories, thin soup versus nutritious meals prepared in Javier's specially designed kitchen, where kids could learn to cook for themselves. The Michael and Sarah Foundation launch. The opening ceremony drew hundreds of people. Jerome, now 12 and more confident but still humble, cut the ribbon with shaking hands. "This is for every kid who just wants to belong somewhere," he said into the microphone, his voice carrying across the crowd. Javier spoke next. "Mama Sarah and Daddy Michael are watching, and we know they're smiling." Community impact statistics. Within 12 months, the changes were measurable. Asterisk child homelessness in their district dropped by 67%. Asterisk foster care placement success rates increased by 45%. Asterisk 200 children received emergency housing assistance. Asterisk 89 families avoided separation through intervention programs. The Davis Community Campus. Aerial footage showed the crown jewel of their work, a sprawling campus where the old industrial district used to be. The main building housed offices, classrooms, and counseling centers. A playground designed entirely by children's input featured climbing structures that looked like castles and spaceships. The community garden produced fresh food for 3 local group homes. Grandpa's Kitchen served free meals to anyone who needed them, no questions asked. Media recognition. Time magazine featured the twins on its cover. The wallet that changed everything. Their story went viral, inspiring similar programs in 12 other cities. 60 Minutes interviewed all 3 of them. When the reporter asked Jerome what he'd learned, the 12-year-old said simply, that families aren't born, they're made, and love is more powerful than money. Their TED Talk, Why Kids Make the Best Leaders, has been viewed over 8 million times. Corporate cultural shift. The Whitmore model of character-based hiring spread to 43 companies nationwide. Employee satisfaction rates soared as businesses discovered what Whitmore had learned. Good people make good employees, regardless of their background. Educational initiatives. The Jerome and Javier Academies opened in 15 cities, providing after-school programs specifically designed for kids in foster care. Each academy was run by adults who'd aged out of the system themselves. The scholarship program had grown to support 150 foster children per year through college, with a 92% graduation rate. 1-year anniversary. Local officials gathered to celebrate the foundation's first anniversary. The mayor announced that their district now had the lowest child poverty rate in the state. "A year ago, we had a problem," she said. "Today, we have a model that the world is copying." The ripple effect. 12 other billionaires had started similar foundations, directly inspired by the twins' story. The Davis Standard became shorthand for authentic, child-centered philanthropy. Personal growth. The twins, now confident young leaders, still maintained their humility. They visited every new group home facility personally, spending time with kids who reminded them of their former selves. We want every kid to know they matter, Javier explained to a reporter. And that someone is looking for them, Jerome added, even if they don't know it yet. Full circle moment. At Lincoln Elementary, the corner where they'd found the wallet now featured a small memorial garden. The plaque read, "The Sarah and Michael Davis Memorial Garden, where love conquers all." Every month, the twins brought current group home kids to plant flowers there, teaching them that small acts of kindness can bloom into something beautiful. But the most powerful moment was still to come, a moment that would prove their story was just the beginning. Present day, 2 years later. Same rainy afternoon, same corner outside Lincoln Elementary. Jerome and Javier, now 13, walked home under a shared umbrella, not because they had to, but because some traditions were worth keeping. They noticed a commotion near the bus stop. The scene unfolds. A young girl, Sophia, 8, sat crying with a torn backpack, school supplies scattered in puddles. 2 older boys, Marcus and Devin, both 10, approached instead of walking past. "Hey, are you okay?" Marcus asked gently. "I dropped everything. My foster mom's gonna be so mad," Sophia whispered. The boys knelt down, gathering her wet supplies. "It's okay," Devin said. "We can help fix this." The recognition. Jerome and Javier watched from their car. "Look familiar?" Jerome smiled. "Very," Javier agreed proudly. Marcus pulled out his lunch money. "Here, we can buy you new supplies." "But then you won't have lunch," Sophia protested. "We'll figure it out. That's what friends do." The beautiful connection. Their driver recognized the scene. "Those boys are from your mentorship program, aren't they?" "Marcus and Devin," Jerome nodded. "We worked with them last year." "And Sophia's in our after-school program," Javier added. The legacy continues. Marcus helped Sophia to her feet. "Come on, there's a place where kids like us always get help." "Where?" Sophia asked. "The Davis Community Campus. Jerome and Javier built it for kids like us." "Who are they?" "They're like everyone's big brothers. They make sure no kid has to be alone." The tradition lives on. The 3 children walked toward the community center, sharing Marcus's umbrella, already laughing together. Same corner, same kindness, new generation. Jerome and Javier followed at a distance, watching their legacy spread. The circle completes. "Think Grandpa's watching?" Javier asked, pointing toward Whitmore Industries. Jerome looked up 45 floors. A familiar figure stood at the window, smiling as he watched the scene below. Final wisdom. Voiceover. Jerome. "We used to think family was about blood. Then we learned it's about love. But now we know family is about teaching others how to love." Last image. The community campus sign in the rain. The Michael and Sarah Davis Community Campus, where every child belongs. Underneath, founded by 2 boys who proved small acts create big changes. Wide shot of the campus at sunset, children playing safely, the cycle of kindness complete and continuing. Now the question is, what wallet is waiting for you to find it? Jerome and Javier proved that age doesn't matter when it comes to changing lives. They were just 11 years old when they chose character over cash, and that choice reunited a family and transformed a community. But here's the beautiful truth. Their story isn't unique. It's happening right now, wherever you are. That foster child in your neighborhood who needs a mentor, that elderly person who could use a friend, that struggling family who just needs someone to see their worth. You don't need to be a billionaire like their grandfather. You don't need to find a wallet full of cash. You just need to choose kindness when it's easier to choose selfishness. Call to action. If this story reminded you that families are built on love, not blood, and that the smallest hearts can create the biggest changes, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to remember that every child deserves to belong somewhere. Final message. Subscribe for more stories that prove love always wins. Because somewhere right now, a child is waiting for their family to find them. Maybe that family is you.